Welcome to Pass the Outlet, episode 38. I'm your host, Michael Benjamin, joined as always by my wingman, Chris Patrick. The stars are shining bright officially. Chris, how we feeling tonight, man?
Man, I'm feeling good. I feel like we've had some good, solid playoff basketball so far. Watching that intro, I feel like with me getting back into hooping, I might need to update the highlight reel. We might need to get some updates in there, but nevertheless, Mike, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. I think we can get Reggie to help out on that one. But of course, here on Pass the Outlet, we break down the beautiful game of basketball. Tonight, we're on to round 2 of the NBA playoffs. The new era of superstars are in full effect, and it's time to take a look at what might be next for the Phoenix Suns. As always, Chris brings us the news from around the net, and on the outlet point guard, we'll look back at the years of a Hall of Fame big man that brought many years of pain to yours truly. But if you're here with us live, watching the playback on Valley Sports Plug YouTube or listening on podcast streaming services, you know we love y'all. Make sure you subscribe to the VSP YouTube channel, leave a like on this video, and click that notification bell so you can stay up to date with everything going on here at Valley Sports Plug. Chris, like we said, it's round 2, but let's take a trip back. Why not give a quick first round recap? And man, when it comes down to the Western Conference, I would say not too many surprises, maybe except for the Nuggets and an explosive series from Minnesota's Jaden McDaniels, but it seemed like everything else was pretty much chalk. But the East is where the fireworks took place. 3 Game 7s, including 2 3-1 series comebacks, won by the number 1 seed Detroit Pistons, and the absolute shocking comeback of the Philadelphia 76ers over the Boston Celtics. Chris, quick first round recap. What caught your eye during the first round of the NBA playoffs?
Oh man. Honestly, this was one of the more exciting first rounds of the NBA playoffs that I can really remember in recent history. You got 3 Game 7s, 3 Game 6s. I think the biggest shock for me was that Nuggets Timberwolves series. Obviously, you got the powerhouse of Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, that kind of 1-2 punch there in Denver. And Jokic didn't pull any punches in his post-game, breakdown of what he felt like happened. And he thinks they just need some help. They were a little banged up, had some pieces missing, but to lose to a 6 seed as a 3 seed is never anything that any organization wants to see. Hopping over to the East, I know it felt like for a lot of people that the Magic kind of figured out the formula and how to beat the Pistons and went up kind of early in that series. But Pistons, stuck to their guns, battled back in that series behind Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, and really put in a strong performance. You see winning that final game by over 20 points. Like, it's no easy feat in the playoffs. The Knicks, I mean, 51-point victory in Game 7 against the Hawks. I'm sorry, Game 6 against the Atlanta Hawks. And if you go back to our last episode of Pass the Outlet, the Hawks were a team that I pegged to be competitive in this playoffs. And I suppose to some extent they were. They had 2 wins against the Knicks, but man, that is just a brutal beatdown in the playoffs. And I think, honestly, the most surprising of them all, the Celtics, the number 2 seed, with a healthy Jason Tatum, although not for the entire series, losing to the 76ers. You got a really healthy 76ers team, which I think that 7 seed isn't really indicative of the talent on that team when you consider Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, Paul George, the whole cast of characters there really showed up and showed out. And we might get into some topics surrounding that series and some of the antics involved, but I think honestly the Celtics getting bounced out in the first round was the most surprising. Not to go back and chime on what we've discussed previously in other episodes of this podcast, but we did talk about how there's a lot of clamoring or chattering around the first round of the NBA playoffs and people thinking that maybe it should go back to being a 5-game series. But I think this year might have proved why a 7-game series is for the best of the product and for the league as a whole, because man, for 3 of these series to be pushed to a 7-game, stretch is something else. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I think it's pretty exciting that you have some upsets early on in both the East and the West, with the Lakers and the Timberwolves in the West, and then the 76ers, and that's pretty much it in the East. But, man, I love what I've seen so far, but I think, spoiler alert, I think it's going to go pretty chalk from here on out.
Yeah, not surprised. And folks, I'm putting my hand up. I was one of those folks that said, it's got to go back to 5-game series for the first round. But man, these superstars proved me wrong, just like the Detroit Pistons coming back from that 3-1 series, Cade Cunningham stepping into the limelight. Some of these other series that you didn't touch on, Chris, I think I was a little bit surprised with the Lakers, obviously with LeBron not having Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic for pretty much the entirety of that series, except for, I believe, either game 5 was when Austin Reeves came back. But no-show Kevin Durant with his injury only plays 1 game, and I think the Rockets played their worst game when he was on the floor in game 2, showed the door quickly, had some nice contributions from some of these young guys like Reed Shepherd and Jabari Smith Jr., but man, it seems like Kevin Durant is already frazzled and ready to leave Houston, and we already know what has happened famously with the burner account. It will happen again, folks. But yeah, we already talked about the Suns a bunch, and we're going to get into it a little bit more. But the Spurs had a great first round. You thought that it was going to be a nice matchup for the Trailblazers and the upcoming Deni Avdija, but just too much length, too much prowess from that young squad, helmed by Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox. And we're going to see how it keeps going. And obviously that means we're on to round 2, which last night we saw the New York Knicks continue to roll, making a statement with a 39-point win this time over Philadelphia in game 1. And San Antonio has a record set, but Julian Champagne, is it Champagnie? I think that's it. His game winner doesn't go as Minnesota wins game 1 on the road. And tonight, Detroit stays to form. They hold on late against Cleveland, 111-101. And what do you know? OKC gets back right on track after a week off with a 108-90 win versus the Los Angeles Lakers. 1 game in the books in each series for round 2. Chris, how you feeling so far? And who's starting to put their name out a little bit further as truly possible championship contenders?
It's a good question. Honestly, in the West, I have no doubt that the Oklahoma City Thunder will be in the NBA championship game. And I'm writing that in early. They're going to roll Los Angeles in 4, maybe 5 games. The one that intrigues me in the West is the Timberwolves and the Spurs, because the Spurs, I think, to some extent, are more talented, but the Timberwolves have far more experience in this playoff run and in this position, because if you remember, they are, I think, 2 times the last 2 years they've been in the Western Conference Finals and come up just short. Man, for Anthony Edwards, say what you will about that guy, and I certainly have my criticisms, but tough, very tough, kind of old school NBA basketball kind of guy. He's just 9-10 days removed from kind of a gruesome hyperextension and a knee injury that we all saw all across social media and up close and personal. To come back and score, I think, 11 of his 18 points in that game on Monday was truly impressive to muscle the Timberwolves over the Spurs. So that's the series to keep an eye on, and that's one that I could see going 6 or 7 games. I think the Spurs, Wemby really had a down offensive game. I think if their coach is solid enough, he'll make the adjustments offensively, and the Spurs will be more competitive in game 2 that's coming up here on the 6th tomorrow. So we'll see, but I think the Timberwolves have a strong chance of going up against the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals, but it would be tough. It'd be reminiscent of those old school Buffalo Bills teams if they continue to get to the Western Conference Finals and come up just short. But this Oklahoma City Thunder team is just something else, man. I mean, we just saw them run through the Suns in 4 games. We saw them make light work of a beat up Lakers team in game 1 of the Western Conference semis. But we'll see. We'll see. They're obviously not unbeatable. They're not unstoppable in a sense. We saw the Pacers last year in the NBA Finals put up quite a battle against them. But as far as the East goes, man, I mean, you look at the Pistons against the Cavaliers. Obviously, the Cavs have a ton of talent in Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. You got Jared Allen putting up big numbers in clutch games. I think that'll be a tough team. But the way the Pistons kind of handled themselves in game 1s, I think they cemented themselves as being the number 1 seed for a reason. They kind of made a statement and like, we are here for a reason. And any hiccups you might have seen against us with the Magic, we've overcome that. The coaches have made the adjustments, and I still think the Pistons will come out on top over the Cavaliers in that series. And lastly, the New York Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers. This is like a throwback matchup. These are 2 historic franchises in Philadelphia and New York. And honestly, really annoying and kind of hated franchises in a lot of ways. You think of Philadelphia and New York, generally speaking, those fan bases are loud and arrogant, but with good reason to some extent. I mean, obviously neither have found great success in recent history, but historically speaking, are both successful. But man, this Knicks team with Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, you got our boy Mikal Bridges. I'm going to continue to call him our boy Mikal Bridges because the Phoenix is where he got his start, where he made his bones. I like this team a lot. Josh Hart got some grit to him as well. They've got pieces on that team, but honestly, man, I think the Knicks got this one in the bag. The 76ers came out with a clear plan of trying to get to the foul line in game 1 and just didn't necessarily translate to anything of an amount of success for them. And you see here, even in the graphic, in the game coming up here on May 6th, the New York Knicks are favored by 7.5 points. So I think that tells the tale there. And Knicks as a 3 seed, they could be the 1 or the 2 seed, honestly, if the dice have been rolled a little different. So that's where I'm at, Mike. I think, honestly, if I'm making predictions early on, I think we're going to see Thunder Knicks in the NBA Finals.
I absolutely love it, man. When you start looking at the rest of these series, how it breaks down, it's the cream of the crop, right? But OKC, man, do the Lakers have enough horses in the barn to really keep up with these guys? We were joking before the stream started as we were watching the end of the game, and you said, "Oh, Thunder in 4." And I said, "Well, I think Luka might be coming back." And you said, "Oh, Thunder in 5." I mean, that's just kind of the true consensus with how just they have so much heavy weaponry. I mean, we talked about Shea tonight. Wasn't his best offensive performance, only 18 points. But then you have Chet Holmgren having a stellar game, 24 points, 12 rebounds. They get it from everywhere, man. Even the second Jalen Williams is going in there, making contributions, stepping his game out and hitting threes when you least expect it. So that one's going to be tough to really muster if you're a Lakers fan, where you probably were super proud how they performed against the Houston Rockets, but here comes the hammer in the OKC Thunder and the previous champions. But man, Chris, I know we're going to talk about Wemby here in just a second as well, but how can you count out the Minnesota Timberwolves with one-legged Anthony Edwards? Just absolutely heroic stuff from this guy. And they have the little pieces that you need to succeed, I think, as a team. And that's why you've seen them in the Western Conference Finals the past 3 seasons, possibly, if you can count into this one, because that's where I'm leaning, man. The Spurs are going to have to figure out some things defensively, specifically to go up against Julius Randle, because the way that he manhandled Dylan Harper at points and just the smaller guards that were trying to big body him, it wasn't helping, right? And then you have the defensive prowess of Jaden McDaniels, the defensive prowess and the boarding of Rudy Gobert. There's great pieces. Shannon Jr. stepping in for an injured Anthony Edwards. It was just, it's impressive to see how they kind of retool and stay where they are. And it's just unfortunate that you have the heavy power of OKC Thunder waiting for you in the conference finals if they do make it. But Knicks, I think this is the year, Chris. Spoiler for the people, I have the same matchup that you're talking about now as we go into the second round. I think it's going to be Thunder and Knicks, but I'm very intrigued with this Pistons Cavaliers series because if you think back to last year, the Cavaliers are what the Pistons were, the surprise team that people kind of saw a little bit out of left field, 60 plus wins, cemented the first seed early on, and then in that second round went up against Indiana, and we all know what happened last year. Does Detroit have it in them to go up against some key veteran pieces in James Harden and Donovan Mitchell? I also love the length of Allen and Mobley. Like it's just going to be hard to match up with them, but it's great to see them squeak out this first game. And honestly, Chris, I don't know. I'm kind of pulling for Detroit, man. It's one of those franchises that it's been really a long time since they've been as relevant as they have been this season. And you kind of always find yourself rooting for those teams until they start to string it together over and over and over. And then they become the vaunted foes. But I would be remiss if we didn't touch on what we've been seeing from the new era of superstars, Chris. The old guard is officially starting to end. We already talked about no Steph Curry this postseason as the Suns took them out in that last play-in game. LeBron James is still going, but we know he is not the same player as he was even just a few seasons ago, even though it is remarkable what he's doing at 42 years old or 41. I can't remember exactly, but Kevin Durant is no longer in there. We know James Harden's woes, even though he's in the playoffs. I got some spotlights on some of these guys, but before I go into my heavy hitters, Chris, I got to ask you, man, when you watch Victor Wembanyama, what really stands out to you, as he is famously called the alien? But what do you like about his game that is truly transcending the new superstars of the NBA?
Man, I mean, Victor Wembanyama is so imposing and was the cornerstone of my fantasy basketball team this last year. Got me to the finals, but came up just short. Now, that wasn't his fault, although he did sit one game during the final week. But regardless, I don't think that would have catapulted me to victory. No, but more so to his game in general, it's his versatility. For a guy of his size, like, it's one thing for a 7-footer to be able to play out on the perimeter. It's another thing for a guy that's 7'6", 7'7". Like, he is incredibly tall, like Yao Ming height. And his ability to take 1 or 2 steps from basically half court and get to the rim is just something you can't really, prepare for in a lot of ways. Cause like, how do you simulate that in practice? How do you prepare for a guy like that when you may only see him 2, 3, 4 times, if you're lucky, per season? And now you're going in a playoff matchup against him. His length is just unparalleled as well. I think he just set a playoff record. What was it? 12 blocks, 11 blocks in game 1 of that series. And granted, they did come up just a couple points short in that game against Minnesota, but I mean, absolutely ridiculous. It was 12 blocks, 15 rebounds. So he can grab pretty much any board that's in his orbit, both on the offensive and the defensive side. And you just hope that you get a game like this in game 1 where his offensive numbers are just a little bit lower, because this guy has the ability to pour in 30 plus offensively and then still give you 10 blocks and 20 boards on the defensive side. Like, you're talking about a guy that can flirt with a quadruple double. And do you know how rare a quadruple double is? Because that has to be points, rebounds, assists, and blocks or steals. But typically, I mean, for Wembanyama, it's going to be blocks. It's not going to be steals. So it's either you're a point guard getting steals, or or a guard getting steals, or you're a guy like Victor Wembanyama getting blocks. And I mean, this is just something we haven't seen in the league. And I know there were a lot of questions about a guy of his size. How healthy can he stay? How effective can he be at that size? I mean, Yao Ming, a guy that comes to mind, Sean Bradley, those guys had shorter careers. And I think Victor Wembanyama's longevity is still in question. I mean, we'll see. But for now, man, he is firmly cemented why he was drafted so high, why the hype was so real. And honestly, Mike, I can't remember another guy in recent history that has lived up to the hype more than Victor Wembanyama has. We talk about if the Phoenix Suns had won that first play-in game against the Portland Trailblazers and they got to take on San Antonio, our mission for them against the Thunder for the Suns was go ahead and win one game. And they couldn't do it. I think they might have been able to steal one against San Antonio, but that might have been about it, because this team is crazy, and Victor Wembanyama is a freak, and there's a reason he's the alien, man. Honestly, this dude is incredible.
It's the only way to describe it. He is a freak, man, and his numbers are still great. Obviously, 19 points, 10 rebounds, 5.6 blocks in 6 games so far this postseason. You already touched on it. The record-setting triple-double, 11 points, 15 rebounds, and the postseason record, 12 blocks. The NBA is in for a rude awakening very, very shortly, and it's already starting right now. Would not be surprised if San Antonio wins this matchup against Minnesota, just because it seems like Victor is dialed in, and he was at the podium already talking about, I got to be smarter on the offensive end. And they're going to be throwing everything at him, and all of those other guys around him are going to have to step up. But, man, San Antonio, props to you if you're a fan, because you got a real one, hopefully, for a long, long time. But I got to touch on some of these other guys. Chris, yeah, we know Shea, obviously, NBA MVP, Finals MVP, just off the gates hot this year in the playoffs, 32 points, 8 assists per game. He recorded a playoff career high 42 points in game 3 against Phoenix, shooting 15 of 18 from the floor. That's what you get from superstars. And another guy who is a superstar nowadays, folks, don't get it twisted, is Anthony Edwards. Not because only his shoes are just hotcakes, they sell like them, but the prowess to understand that it is playoffs and it is that time to show up for your team. We know he suffered that left knee hyperextension and the bone bruise in game 4 of the first round. And they said, initial reports said it was going to be a multi-week absence. But he is a dog, and he is going to ride for his guys, and shows up in game 1 in just in 25 minutes, 18 points, shot 62% from the field. Man, you just have to love guys like that who put it on the line for their team. The same thing goes for Jalen Brunson. Chris, the more and more I want to hate this guy, the more and more I love him. I cannot believe it, because he has put one of the biggest markets in the NBA back on the map as a perennial playoff contender every single year. 26.3 points, 6.2 assists. He had 35 points in that game 1 against the Sixers, and 27 of them were in the first half. I mean, the guy is just on a mission right now. And I asked the question last past the outlet, was this year their year? And the way things are falling, it just might be to make it out of the East. But the big one, the big kahuna, the former number 1 overall pick, Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons, the way that he grasped on to Detroit and willed them across the finish line in that first round matchup against the Magic, who honestly maybe should have not even been there, was absolutely impressive, averaging 32.4 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 6.3 assists. Chris, those are 2K numbers. And you look at the last 3 games as well, when you needed to have it, the star showed up. Game 5, 45 points. Game 6, 32 points, 10 rebounds, 4 steals. And Game 7, 32 points, 12 assists, 2 blocks. It's just, the NBA is in good hands. Let's say that. Now, are there some flopping issues? Are there just a little bit aggressive technicals sometimes from the referees? Yes. But what you want from your superstars and the next era, I think we are off to an immaculate start. Is there anybody that I'm leaving off of this list, Chris? Because there's still some great players out there that are true key contributors to these teams left in the playoffs.
Yeah, Mike, I think you got to give some love to Tyrese Maxey. That kid is pretty incredible. You look at the supporting cast for Detroit and Jalen Duren. That kid's pretty good as well. I know De'Aaron Fox is kind of, from his days with the Kings, now with the Spurs, doesn't get a lot of love. Doesn't have the flashiest numbers, but he is a good contributor. I mean, yeah, Mike, I think that's I'm probably forgetting others. You look at the teams that were eliminated as well, and Paolo Banchero, and if he had some help, I think that Magic team could be pretty dangerous as well. We talked about last episode, Jalen Johnson on the Atlanta Hawks. That kid is pretty hot as well. There's some guys out there. Denny Avicii, hate him or love him, and most people hate him. That guy is pretty good too. But yeah, Mike, I think it's very interesting, especially looking at this graphic you prepared here with the new era of superstars. You have Jalen Brunson and Cade Cunningham here in the East battling, probably going to meet each other in the Eastern Conference Finals. But man, the dichotomy of these guards, man. Jalen Brunson's about 6'1". He's listed at 6'2", but he's probably about 6.5, 6'1". And then Cade Cunningham's listed at 6'6". as a guard and kind of like the primary ball handler and point guard. So you're talking about like you and me, basically, essentially, with a give or take an inch or two. So I got love for the smaller guards, but it's funny because you also have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in this graphic, and he's known as the free throw merchant, the foul baiter, the flopper. But Jalen Brunson kind of has a very similar game and doesn't get a lot of the same criticism. Maybe that's because the level of success. Shai's the reigning MVP, likely the back-to-back MVP, reigning NBA champion on his way to his second consecutive championship. And so, people love, I don't necessarily want to call Jalen Brunson an underdog, but hasn't reached that pinnacle of reaching the NBA finals, let alone winning it or getting those individual accolades. So I think he gets to fly under the radar with a lot of that stuff, but that's a broader issue of flopping and foul baiting, whatever you want to call it. I think it goes both ways. We can talk about that. And I think we will, spoiler alert, I think we will have that conversation, but yeah, Mike, I think the future of the NBA is in good hands, and it's more talented than it's ever been. And I think guys that are role players now would have been superstars 20, 30 years ago. It's just the insane level of talent in the league right now. And I mean, you look at these playoffs alone, the Osor twins they're twins, right?
The Thompson twins.
The Thompson twins, yeah, Osor and Amin. Yeah, that's right. With the Rockets and Pistons, respectively. They're young guys that came up through the NBA G League or the Development League or whatever it's called, and are starting to be key contributors to their teams, respectfully. So I think the future of the league is in good hands.
The future of the league is in good hands, and the dreams of some are still alive in the 2026 NBA playoffs. But unfortunately for us and the Phoenix Suns, we know that dream died about 8 days ago now. And we are off to the offseason, Chris. Always our favorite time of year. Just kidding. But it's time to look at the next steps. What are the Phoenix Suns going to do to capitalize on what an impressive season it was? For some would say, really just did not expect any of this to happen and how it unfolded. But it's time to kind of look at what's coming and what did happen a little bit throughout 2025, 2026. But first and foremost, we know from the trades for Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, the Phoenix Suns do not have a first-round draft pick this year in 2027. And what happened this season? We had Jalen Green miss most of the first half of the season with the hamstring injury. I think he pulled it 3 different times. Then we had Dylan Brooks miss 18 games after he broke or fractured his left hand after the All-Star game break. And then Booker missed more than 10 games late in the season with an ankle injury as well. And then the Suns kind of, they were hobbling across the finish line to end this season, and it faltered over into the OKC series. You miss Mark Williams for the entire series. Jordan Goodwin plays 5 minutes in game 1, and then he's out for the rest of it. Grayson Allen missed some time towards the end of the year and just was not fully healthy at all the final 20 games of this year. But the big bugaboo, Chris, is once again, it's a tale as old as time. The big three, if you want to put quotations on it, in Devin Booker, Jalen Green, and Dylan Brooks, only played 10 games together in the regular season. So what kind of snapshot can you really get about this team and what things might need to change? But let's reminisce, Chris. I'll pass it over to you just a little bit on what was the 2025-2026 season. And if you're GM Brian Gregory, who's the first few guys that you're re-signing from this list of free agents for the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Phoenix Suns. I do fully expect there to be moves, if not an outright trade or two. When we look back at this last season, Mike, honestly, we have to really look at the full scope of it and go back to like September, October of last year. This team overachieved by all measures. Everyone in the national media would have written the Suns off as missing the playoffs, being a bottom feeder in the Western Conference, and honestly in the NBA as a whole. But I mean, through the criticisms of the hiring of Brian Gregory to the hiring of Jordan Knott, from even this our own podcast and our own Valley Sports Plug network, like we had our criticisms. Everybody clowned on the alignment. But man, this team made the playoffs. We were the 7th seed, where if the play-in tournament didn't exist, we would have been a straight off playoff team. Now, granted, we lost to the Portland Trailblazers in the first round of the play-in, which none of us wanted to see. We should have won that game. But let's not confuse this whatsoever. The Phoenix Suns should have beat the Portland Trailblazers and been playing against the Spurs in that first round. Would it have made a difference? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe like I said, maybe we would have won a game. Maybe we would have won 2 games. But the chips fell where they may. And we went on and we played the Golden State Warriors and we won that game pretty convincingly, but not as probably convincingly as we maybe should have. Regardless, we got into the playoffs and we went up against the world champion Oklahoma City Thunder. Not ideal. We all know how that ended. But Mike, to answer your question, like, this season was great, and granted, we didn't see a lot of the trio. I'm not going to go as far as to call them the big three in Booker, Green, and Brooks. However, when they did play together, it was a mixed bag. You know, we got some good performances, some bad performances, some mediocre performances. But I think one thing was made certain during that stretch of all 3 of them playing together is that it's not a good mix. You can't have all 3 of those guys, and someone's going to have to go. Matt Ishbia kind of put that to rest. It's not going to be Devin Booker, guys. Devin Booker is not going anywhere. And we might get into that later on. And I know a lot of people were asking that question, myself included. Just, I love to play devil's advocate, Mike. Sometimes people hate a devil's advocate, but sometimes I got to be that guy. And on the Heat Check podcast, we kind of asked that question. You know, he kind of rides that line of superstar, star, you know, in the league. And I think right now, he's more on the star side than the superstar side. But I wouldn't count Devin Booker out from having that superstar potential just based off his history and based off what he means to this organization. Now, he might be our superstar, but when it comes to the league as a whole, is that the case? And I think you do need another great player to pair along with him. And I think Jalen Green shows a lot of qualities of also being a star player. He is freakishly athletic and he can pour in the points in numbers. Is he the smartest player though? Not usually. No, he isn't. Not usually. And Dylan Brooks, man, I think this is where my bias is going to start to show, because I think a lot of Suns fans might disagree with me, but I think Dylan Brooks is a total cornball. I think he really buys into the villain narrative a lot. And I think it comes to more of a detriment to the team when you talk about the technical fouls, him kind of playing ISO ball and overestimating his ability more than he should. I think he needs to step back into more of a role and being a role player and a number 3 or 4 option. And he fancies himself a number 1 or 2 option. And you can't have 3 guys on the same team that fancy themselves as a number 1 and 2 option, because that's always going to leave someone on the outside looking in. And it can never be Devin Booker. And for Jalen Green's age and talent level, he can't be a 3rd option either. He needs to be a 2nd option at best. So what do you do with that? I think I might be putting what is it, Mike? Putting the cart before the horse. I think Dylan Brooks needs to go. I know. Fans love him. He brings the grit. You got the whole aspect of him being the villain and Colin Gillespie being the villain junior. But I think you got to try and move off of Dylan Brooks. And to answer your question, Mike, before I pass this back to you, when it comes to the free agents coming up, you let Mark Williams go and you invest in Kaman Malawach and Oso Ighodaro, and you re-sign Colin Gillespie, because that's a solid guard off the bench that I think really brings a spark to this team and a grit to this team. So you get rid of the villain, you keep the villain junior, and you roll forward with the youth.
And that's why we love you, Chris. You get to play devil's advocate, and that's why we have these conversations, man, because guess what? I'm not aligned with you on some of these takes, to be honest with you. I don't think that the Phoenix Suns can move off of Dylan Brooks, not because of the play on the court, but because of what it means to the mentality of what they're building. So if I'm looking to move somebody, and I know it sucks because he didn't get a fair shake because of his injuries, but I think Jalen Green has to be the one to go. And it's not because of how he performed, but I am aligned with you. The ball dominance of all three of those guys is just not going to be a good mix long term, right? And I do want to invest more time in Jalen Green, but if you're talking about taking the next steps to winning playoff series, to being title contenders, the Suns are going to have to get bigger. They have to get Devin Booker off ball. We cannot do the point book anymore. It is just a recipe for disaster, it seems like, over the past couple of years. You're going to have to get creative through the free agency market as well, too. So I'll start here. I'm with you here. You got to re-sign Colin Gillespie, and it's going to cost some money because he just had an incredible season, set the franchise record in three-pointers made, averaged 12.7 points, 4.6 rebounds on 40% from deep. You also need to re-sign Jordan Goodwin. As much flack and how we tossed him to the side before last season, he is a crucial piece to the defensive unit as well as that bench. 8.7 points and 4.9 rebounds. And another place where I disagree with you here, Chris, is I think the Phoenix Suns should re-sign Mark Williams, because you're going to get him on the cheap. When it came down to it, he was injured. He did play a career-high 60 games, but he wasn't available when you needed him in the playoffs. And for the unfortunate situation, I'm not ready to hand the reins over yet to Kaman Malawach, because I'm not sure if he's shown the case to be able to do that. So you could almost, let's go football here. You could almost do a Jacoby Brissett, put him out there for 15, 20 games. And then by that time, Kaman has hopefully bulked up through the offseason, gotten more comfortable in his body and with his game, and then you hand the reins over. I'm not saying sink long money into Mark Williams. He honestly doesn't deserve it because he hasn't shown that he's available for you enough. But those are some of the places that I kind of just we're on different sides of the spectrum with that. But it's going to be interesting, man, because I got this quote here from Matt Ishbia. What are the Suns going to do outside of internally? Because he said, I think a lot of times looking externally is not always the right answer, especially when you have the great camaraderie, great culture, great identity that we have. And I hate to burst your bubble as well. It sounded like Matt told Burns and Gambo they plan to work on a long-term extension with Dylan Brooks too, Chris. So I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. But okay, so my wants for the offseason, I need another guard in here. I don't know if they have to be a starter, but Colin is almost kind of a two guard, right? Even though he is smaller, but he can fill it up. And does he really create for your offensive guys who need the ball in their hands as a true point guard would? You have to get bigger. We always talk about the issues that the Phoenix Suns had giving up offensive rebounds consistently, especially down the stretch of this year. Investing in maybe a power forward. Do you go in the draft and try and take somebody in the second round that's bigger as well? Continue to get younger and foregoing. The next steps are always under construction. We know this. But I will say, even though Gambo did put the kibosh on this, it's fun to have a little dialogue about what could be, what might be, and if it really makes sense. And we have to talk about the breaking news from a couple of days ago now. In the reports that the Phoenix Suns could be one of the teams interested in services of Aaron Gordon. Now, we talk about guys not being available. This is a guy who has not been available, and he literally was not available for 3 of the 6 games that Denver played against Minnesota in the first round. He's only played 87 of 164 games the last 2 seasons, including just 36 games this year. But he did have one of his better scoring outputs than he has over the past couple of seasons, 16.2 points, 5.8 rebounds, and he's expanded his range as well, shoots 38.9% from 3. I know it's kibosh, but let's go back in time before we start hearing all this, Chris. Would you have any interest in possibly bringing in at that time by season's start would be the 31-year-old Aaron Gordon for the Phoenix Suns to finally have a power forward? Because damn it, Chris, we've been waiting for a long damn time to have a power forward.
Yeah, Mike, this, as VSP Tallman would say, dreaming is free. I've come to grow fond of Aaron Gordon and the game that he's, how do I say this? He's kind of transitioned to a different style in his time with the Nuggets, as he different from what he had when he was on the Orlando Magic. Now, I find this graphic to be highly intriguing because there's no way in hell all 4 of these players see the court together. Aaron Gordon is slated to make $32 million on his contract next season. So you're talking about having to move Jalen Green or Dillon Brooks, or, sounds like probably Jalen Green. Now, what is the Nuggets' appetite for that? It sounds like the Nuggets are more intrigued in a Dillon Brooks than they are Jalen Green. Before you sent me the agenda for tonight, I had a teaser here, social Swish of a Denver Nuggets media outlet, basically saying, could you imagine Dillon Brooks on this team? And they're kind of salivating over the thought of Dillon Brooks. So it might be a case where, I know you say you'd prefer to keep Dillon Brooks over Jalen Green, but if they're going towards a youth movement, I know Aaron Gordon doesn't necessarily calculate into that, but if they prioritize their backcourt as being younger with, and again, Devin Booker being younger, he's about to be 30 years old, but Jalen Green's like what, 20, 21, 22, like he's a young cat. Whereas as Dillon Brooks is a little older as well, plus you have the antics of all of his technical fouls and not being able to shut the fuck up. Excuse me. I know we normally don't curse on Pass the Outlet, but I don't like Dillon Brooks. To answer your question, I am intrigued by this. I wouldn't hate seeing Aaron Gordon in a Suns uniform. We desperately do need a power forward because that position has just been lacking. And this is a guy that brings size and he can play kind of all 3 levels. He can score from the perimeter, the mid-range, and right at the rim, and is a pretty solid defender. But again, you bring up the great point of his availability. And that is, again, a VSB Tallman quote, the best ability, the best quality is availability. And if you're not available, what good are you to this team? And that's where the Nuggets just kind of ran into in the playoffs, is this guy not being available when they needed him most. And he's kind of like the Avatar in that way. And when the world needed him most, he vanished, So, but you kind of run into that again. You kind of run into that with guys we've had, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton. Where were those guys when we needed them? They were hurt. They were banged up. And you look at our team here, Mark Williams, when you needed him the most, he was banged up. Mark Williams, he was so good to start the season, but this guy has not seen a full 82 ever in his entire life, and is, in my opinion, not capable of it. Some guys are just not built for it, and maybe Aaron Gordon is that guy. So for $32 million, makes me nervous, Mike. It makes me nervous. And I don't know if I would necessarily want to pull the trigger on that, because by all measures, I know Jalen Green, and this graphic of him with his tongue out is distracting to me, to be honest with you. But he had been mostly healthy throughout his entire career, and the beginning of this season was a bit of a fluke, but he turned it around, had a great end of the season, had a great playoff run. Honestly, he was putting up numbers when Booker honestly wasn't stepping up to where he needed to be. But Dillon Brooks, man, he is just kind of selfish, and I don't like that guy. I don't like that guy.
And that's okay. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. He is the self-proclaimed villain that a lot of people have thrown on him as well. This is intriguing. This Aaron Gordon situation is intriguing. Obviously, I got love for the guy, former Arizona Wildcat. I thought he was an absolute key piece to that title team in 2023 for the Denver Nuggets. And I loved how he has changed his game as well. He's adjusted to the times. We've known him at the beginning of his career as the dunker, the crazy guy, all the athleticism. And as he got older, he started to transition into a bigger body, like you talked about, more defensive prowess, king of the boards, and now stretches out to 3. I mean, you can't beat that. But am I okay with leveraging what this team is building culture-wise and key pieces for the future? I don't think you can, man. And obviously, when you start talking about putting the numbers together, what truly would make sense, and if it's even possible, you're going to have to get rid of one of those guys. But it's interesting, Chris, because, we only had the 1 year sample size. We talked about how Devin Booker, Jalen Green, and Dillon Brooks only played 10 games together during the regular season. So you really don't know how they meshed properly. But was that 10 games enough to let you know that this isn't a core unit that can win a title? And at the end of the day, isn't that your only goal, right? That should always be the only goal. And especially from where the Phoenix Suns have been the past 5 years as a team that has been a good team, went through the ringer with coaches, different star players, but found themselves on the other end of it as a playoff team that is better than most could. The next steps are continuing to get better. And like I said, you got to get bigger, you got to get younger, and you got to get Devin Booker off the ball if you're going to pay him $72 million a year, because it's just not going to be successful. There's a reason that Gambo said this is kiboshed. I mean, it's going to be impossible to pay him, and the assets that Denver is going to be asking for just do not make sense at all. But I wonder, man, if I'm the Phoenix Suns, I would honestly rather trade either Jalen Green or Dillon Brooks this offseason than to just try and run it back again, because you have to look at the cap situation once again and really look yourself in the mirror and say, what contributor can you get in the front court that makes a difference for a team that's at least pushing for second round Western Conference Finals? That's what you have to ask yourself. Can it be done with those big 3? Only time will tell. The last thing I did kind of want to touch on, we know the rumor mill has been going for all of these other big names. Giannis, Ja Morant has been floated out there. Now we're hearing Anthony Davis. And it's funny because all of these guys are literally the epitome of like what we don't want. They're getting older and they're hurt all the time. Ja Morant played 140 games of 328 in the last 4 seasons. Guess what? Anthony Davis, 147 of 328 games. Those guys didn't even play 20 games this past year. And they're Super Bowl dominant. Like, that's not what we need. And I know you talked about if Devin Booker is not a star, you need to think about bringing in another superstar. But those guys just aren't scratching the itch for that. But Chris, we're going to have plenty more time. Like we said, it's been a week since the Suns were bounced from the playoffs. We had to touch on the early offseason just a little bit, but we're going to let sleeping dogs lie for a little bit at least. Or I don't know, maybe we'll see them in the social swish because it's about that time. Chris, what do you got for us tonight?
Yes, Mike. Yes, it is about that time. And maybe we'll trim this down a little bit, but we'll just have to see. This is the social swish, news from around the net, where I go and I scour every corner of the internet to find all the best basketball stories. I see what people are saying, from Reddit to Twitter to just straight up articles, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, On3, every single place that you could imagine. I go and take a look. And for any listeners who have been around for a while, y'all know that I have a lot of love for r/Suns, which is the Reddit for the Phoenix Suns, the official, unofficial Reddit of the Phoenix Suns. And there's a bit of a history with them and the Valley Sports Plug Network, but it's all love. It's all love. There's no love lost. But I think we'll start there because last episode, in episode 37, they didn't make the cut. It was kind of a bit of a lackluster month, or a couple of weeks for r/Suns. But I did find one here that I think is topical and a bit interesting. So we'll start here. Let me go ahead and pull this up. And for those audio only listeners, I'll kind of read a little bit of what we have here. This is on r/Suns, user Gringo Salamanca. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. He's a top 1% poster, ladies and gentlemen. He's got the badge. And he posted a screenshot of a graphic here. And the caption is, Devin Booker has been fined $35,000. This statement contradicts itself. And this is an official press release from the NBA. And it says, Suns Booker fined. From New York, April 23rd, 2026, Phoenix Suns guard Devin Booker has been fined $35,000 for public criticism of the officiating. It was announced today by James Jones, Executive Vice President, Head of Basketball Operations. Following an investigation, including multiple interviews and video review, the league found no basis to any claim of bias or misconduct by game officials. Booker made his comments to the press following the Suns' 120-107 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 2 of their first-round playoff series on April 22nd at Paycom Center. The NBA has also determined that Booker's technical foul at 2 minutes and 5 seconds in the third quarter was improperly assessed, and it has therefore been rescinded. So, Mike, this user is saying that it is contradictory because they have found but on one hand, they have found no basis of the claim of misconduct by the officials, but also found that the officials made the wrong call. And this is stemming from a play where Devin Booker was chasing a ball out of bounds and flipped the ball behind himself to save it. And it bounced off of, I believe, Jalen Williams. Could have been another player. It's been a little while. But the player turned, I think Alex Caruso turned to the official and said, "You got to tee him up." And the official swiftly obliged and said, "You know what? You're right, Alex Caruso. I should tee him up for doing a very routine basketball play." Even if Devin Booker had turned around 180 and chucked the ball off of his shins, that is a perfectly normal play in the game of basketball. Mike, am I crazy here? Is this press release contradictory?
To your opinion, I would say so, yes, and to a lot of others as well. I love how they state no basis to any claim of bias or misconduct, and then they go straight into, but the technical foul was rescinded because we fucked up. Like, you can't make it up. It was one of the worst performances from James Williams. I bet you if you asked him, the referee, James, he would say it was not his best performance either. And it was very refreshing to see Devin Booker speak so candidly at the microphone stand about him, because there are still some issues that the NBA referees and the NBA PA need to look into to make sure that the game is as enjoyable as it possibly is, not only for the fans, but for the players as well. Because if you feel like it is completely one-sided all the time, sometimes there's just some facts that go along into it. And, there was also another famous play, Devin Booker elevating for a jump shot and Alex Caruso kind of faking a blow. And of course that was a foul on Booker. And then the next thing down on the other end, it's a defensive foul on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So sometimes the NBA finds amazing ways to put its own foot in its mouth, and this might be one of them. But overall, when I take from that whole situation, it's going to happen. This is always going to happen. The refs are going to make mistakes, or they're going to do weird shit like that. Crap, we normally don't cuss on this pod, but we're letting it fly today, and that's all right, because once again, we talk about how livid Devin Booker was about this situation, where if the Suns really wanted a puncher's chance in that series, Game 2 had to be the game that they got, going back home to see if they might be able to claw out one and leave Phoenix 2-2, and then you really don't know what happens from there. And to see that, as Devin Booker might feel pulled away from you from the officiating, and the terrible situations that were occurring within that game, that's what you get at the microphone stand. And it was just a breath of fresh air to see Devin Booker go against his own character, I would say, in that regard, and really speak, I would say, how a fan would, but within the player mentality. And I think he did it the right way, where it wasn't just over aggressive or the wrong kind of way of making his points valid. So that was it. Probably the easiest $35,000 that Devin Booker ever shelled out to the NBA and never will be from him.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, Booker can certainly afford this fine, and he definitely knew that it was coming. And I think that's why he had no fear. And he called the referee out by name. I think he said James Williams. He said James was terrible tonight. And it wasn't just this call. There was another couple of questionable, bad calls. And the Thunder are known for their foul baiting and flopping ways, and whether it's Shea or whether it's coached, and then there's a lot of speculation on that. I will, again, play devil's advocate and give these refs somewhat of the benefit of the doubt. Not necessarily with this play, because I think that was just complete BS. I think whatever he thought he saw there, or if Alex Caruso actually influenced him making that call, that's a whole nother story. But clearly the NBA's investigation found that wasn't the case. But regardless, going back to what I was saying, my benefit of the doubt for the NBA referees is that they're experiencing this game in 3D in real time, where we all have the benefit of seeing it in slow motion, replayed from different angles, two-dimensionally on our screens, to where you can tell when a player is selling a call when you're watching it in slow motions. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander distorts his face and body into ways that no human should be able to do, but he pulls it off and he gets the whistle. And like I said, so does Jalen Brunson, and honestly, so does Jalen Green and Devin Booker and Dylan Brooks and every player in the NBA. They're learning that this is how you get to the free throw line, and this is how you get extra chances. And until the NBA does more to crack down on it or officiate the game in a different way, you're going to continue to see it. But to the point of this post and to the play in question, I think it was completely ridiculous. And I get that they have to take the league office has to take a principled stance, and they can't have players speaking about referees in post games this way. But from a fan perspective and from Devin Booker's perspective, there should be accountability for this James Williams cat. He maybe remove him from playoff crews. Maybe say, hey, if you're going to make a call this bad and we have to go back and make a full press conference, not even press conference, a full press release, and we have to rescind this technical, like, strike one. Maybe have a system like strike one, James. If you have another bad call and another bad technical that we have to rescind, strike two. And then at 3 strikes, you're not on playoff crews anymore. Like, I think that's what players and fans really want to see, is equal parts accountability. We talk about, Mike, help me out here. Scott Foster, the famous Chris Paul arch nemesis, where it seemed like every time he was officiating a Chris Paul game, there was disparate treatment. And you can't have that at the highest level when you consider the amount of money these players are making, the amount of revenue generated for these teams. And I don't want to, give the Tallmans of the world any credence, but the amount of money being bet on these guys, like, the officiating directly impacts the end result, whether it's the teams, the bets, or the fan experience in general. It's bad for the game. It's bad for the game. And I think as much as I agree, they're okay, hold Devin Booker accountable for making those comments publicly, but also hold the official accountable. And just rescinding his call is not accountability. I'm sorry, it's just not. But Mike, I digress, and we move on. And I'm going to keep it with r/Suns, because honestly, they didn't show out last time, but we have two. We have two in this iteration of the social swish. And I think this one might make you feel good. This might hit a little close to home. We have on r/Suns user Avtony. It's Anthony, but with a V instead of an N. And he posted the caption, "We're finally free." And it's a screenshot of Sleeper HQ on X. And there's layers to this, guys. So if you're on audio only, I'm sorry, but it's a clip of a video. Jalen Johnson hits a huge 3 to cut the lead down to 58 in the Hawks against the Knicks. game, and the Sleeper HQ posted, Chris Paul, you can now rest, because infamously against the Thunder, it was Chris Paul hits a huge three to cut the lead to 40, I think, or cut the lead down to 40. So now Chris Paul is no longer the meme. The Phoenix Suns are out of the spotlight, and the Hawks are now the laughing stock with their humiliating defeat to the New York Knicks. Mike, are you able to rest easy now?
Oh, we can go to sleep and not have nightmares anymore. Chris, it's just amazing, man. I don't send requests over anymore to you for Social Swish because I know you're going to bring the goods. And this was something that I saw after this absolute shellacking that the Hawks took at the hands of the New York Knicks. And this was just perfect. I mean, this is what Twitter is made for, man. I'm telling you. So that one was made famous. I think it was the Mavericks game when Luka, Jalen Brunson, and company came into Phoenix and absolutely took our sack lunch and just made us go home, cry to our mamas, to the point where the franchise had to put out a statement that said, we will come back from this. You can't make it up. So all of that encapsulating from what that meme meant, this is it. This is perfect. We can all rest now. Thank you, Jalen Johnson. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I got nothing but love for the Hawks and Jalen Johnson for recreating the meme, reiterating the meme, and it's hilarious. I didn't realize that until you just pointed it out, that Jalen Brunson was involved in both of those instances on different teams. Yeah, during that brutal shellacking that the Mavericks laid on the Suns, I was actually in Las Vegas for my in-laws' birthday at the time, and got to witness that out of town, at a random bar off strip, next to a Mavericks fan who honestly, like, could have been talking a lot more shit, but I think honestly just felt really bad for me because I think I was wearing this jersey. I think I was wearing this exact jersey at the time, funny enough. Really excited because that was, Mike, that was game 7, right, of that series?
That was game 7. Yes, it was.
Man, I try and memory block these things. But yeah, again, like Mike said, I will double down. Thank you, Jalen Johnson. Thank you, Atlanta Hawks, for remaking the meme. And honestly, like an 18-point difference, that's far more brutal.
Well, and the even better thing about that too, while you really can put the sleeping dog to rest, is that Atlanta was at home the same way the Suns were at home too.
Yes.
So I remember my dad texted me a screenshot of the score when it was like 90 to 32, and I couldn't believe it. I just absolutely couldn't believe it, man. What a pounding.
I mean, you rarely see whoopings that bad in the regular season, let alone the playoffs. I know it's the first round, but my goodness. Mike, I know this episode has gone a little long, so I think I got two more. I got two more for you, and maybe we can keep them short. It is funny to me, and maybe this was a bit of a Reddit heavy episode for the Social Swish, but I would be remiss if I didn't share this one. This is from r/NBA memes and user no adaptness 4647, and he said, "Who made this?" with a pleading eyes emoji and a wilting rose emoji. And it shows an AI enhanced picture of a really jacked DeAndre Ayton in a Lakers uniform with his stat line: 3 points, 3 rebounds on 1 field goal. I assume so. This was posted 28 days ago. I assume this was after a lackluster DeAndre Ayton performance, clearly from the 3 points, 3 rebounds. Now, he did bounce back. He had a double-double in the game tonight against Oklahoma City, although they did lose that game. But Mike, we talk about the up and down nature of DeAndre Ayton that we experienced here with the Suns, again with the Portland Trailblazers, to the point where they moved on from him. And I think, saw that with the Lakers, where at the beginning of the season, Lakers fans were like, man, people gave up on this guy way too soon. He's a beast, dominating, to then being really down on him. Like, wow, the Lakers got to cut this guy, to now, I think they've probably settled into the fact that you're either going to get a double-double or you're going to get a stat line like this. But Mike, what is your reaction to a picture like this?
Well, I love AI because my God, man, look at the freaking chonk, dude. I could never imagine to be that big. Yeah, it's funny now because it just seems like it's been so long since DeAndre Ayton has been a Phoenix Sun, Chris, and in his two stops after Phoenix, it's been the same song and dance. DeAndre Ayton is who he is. He is just the guy who he has all the characteristics that you would ever want in a big man. He has great touch. He can shoot that little 15-footer. You know, there are times where he can really be aggressive and show his merit as one of the better big men in the NBA, but it is so bipolar. You really never know what you're going to get from DeAndre Ayton. Tonight, he had, 10 points, 12 rebounds? But, Chris, it was almost like I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. I don't know what impact he really made on the floor tonight. I mean, it showed with what Chet did to him up and down the floor, 24 points, 12 rebounds as well. There's just different levels, man. And we already know the NBA is the best of the best. And for somebody who had such promise, who was such a powerhouse coming out of the University of Arizona, to showed glimpses when he had the right leaders around him and never really wanted to dive in and take that leadership and grow himself to the next level, this is what you get. He's going to be a guy that ends up playing probably 12, 15 years in the NBA, maybe, because it's already starting to stretch up there. This is year 7 for him already? Something like that? He has the tools, like I said, but he'll never have it up here, man. That's the unfortunate thing when it comes down to DeAndre Ayton. And I think we're always going to have that what if. And I'm not talking about what if the Suns won the finals. My big thing is, what if the Phoenix Suns tried to go for a full season with Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, and Kevin Durant instead of trading for Bradley Beal? That's my biggest what if of probably the last 15 years, Chris.
Yeah, it's a great question. Or I mean, you could even go back to what if they took Luka Doncic instead? Like, I don't know, man. I agree with you. I think DeAndre Ayton will stick around. I think that he will play a role to some extent, but for a number 1 overall draft pick to be this mediocre in the league is disappointing. And I know for Suns fans especially, like, there was a lot of hype because a center was a position of need, and DeAndre Ayton did show, a lot of talent at the University of Arizona, but just never translated. And I think you're just going to see that up and down nature of him. And I agree with you. I love AI. No NBA player is that jacked. I mean, maybe Zion, but he's also like not that healthy. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Another Arizona story. I didn't have a topic for this in the social swish or our graphic for it, but to put it out there, Pete announced that he's going to be in the NBA draft. I know there's mixed opinions on him and his ability on the next level. And I think we'll get into that potentially when we get closer to the NBA draft on future episodes. But Mike, there is one last topic and one more news story I prepared for the social swish. And I even asked you in show prep, what is your appetite for somewhat controversial topics? But I think we'll maybe be a little Brian Gregory on this one. I think we'll be aligned to some extent. But I'm curious to what you think, because I think there's been a lot of noise for nothing to some extent. And this is going outside of the NBA into the WNBA. And it's the number 1 overall WNBA draft pick, Azzi Fudd, and her relationship with her now teammate, Paige Bueckers, who I believe was the number 1 draft pick the year prior for the Wings. And I think a lot of people, the criticism has been that a lot of people felt like maybe Azzi Fudd wasn't the number 1 talent in this draft. You talk about Olivia Miles and Awi Pham, were believed to potentially be, I may be mispronouncing those, I'm sorry, but were maybe believed to be more talented than her. However, potentially the consensus, or I guess the thought out there, the controversial thought out there, is that maybe the Wings made this draft pick to keep their star player in Paige happy by drafting her partner out of college, and now they're playing together. And a lot of the concern was, you have 2 teammates who are in a romantic relationship together. if things go south, how is that going to impact it? You know, on a day-to-day basis, even if they are in a happy relationship, every happy relationship will have their disagreements from time to time. Will that translate poorly onto the court? Mike, I do want to get your thoughts on this, but I do have to add my opinion in here real quick, is that it's not like this is the first time we've had teammates in a relationship together in the WNBA. The WNBA is notoriously, you know, how do I say this, you know, kindly? There are a lot of lesbian players in the WNBA, Mike. There's a lot of people with that sexual orientation. You look here locally, and we just had Dewana Bonner and her teammate Alyssa Thomas were in a relationship. Natasha Cloud and Isabel Harrison, even going back as far as Diana Taurasi and Penny Taylor were in a relationship together while playing for the Phoenix Mercury. So it's not uncommon, but I think the largest criticism is because of her being the number one pick when people might have not felt like it was deserved, just to appease Paige Bueckers. What are your thoughts overall on this situation?
Well, let's talk about the player, Azzi Fudd, first. I think it was merited. I mean, you look at all the awards she got this year for her, what was it, 5th year? She was a super senior, but she averaged 17.3 points, man. About 3 rebounds, 3 assists, shot 59% from the field, shot 45% from 3. And if you really look back to that 2025 UConn team that won it all, you might say that she was the more impactful player than Paige Bueckers in that tournament. So she's a beast. She's going to be a great player. So either way, you know, I think when it comes down to the draft, it's a crapshoot. If there's multiple players that might have been deserving of the first round pick, then you really can't go wrong with picking one of the 3. So I don't think that's the controversy. I just think this is so interesting on a human connection level, because you touched on a lot of it, man. Like, what happens during the bad days? Are you able to put your emotions aside and really focus on the craft of basketball and do what you need to do if you're, you know, disappointed or upset or mad at your partner? Like, those are interesting intricacies that I think about. But at the end of the day, I don't think it really should make an effect on who you're picking if you're bringing Azzi Fudd in to play with her girlfriend Paige Bueckers at the end of the day, because both of them proved, and I don't know, I might have to look back, were they dating when they won the national championship? If anything, they probably liked each other and they won a title. So they proved that they can work together through thick and thin, man. Yeah, it's funny, and I'm glad that you brought it up. I was there. I was on the floor as a ball boy when the Phoenix Mercury won their first ever title, when Penny Taylor and Diana Taurasi were together. I think it was 2005. My goodness, 2005 or 2007, when they beat the Detroit Shock, who I don't think is in the WNBA any longer. But this is the beautiful thing about basketball, too. It doesn't always have to be about the X's and O's. And we know as an entertainment business, some of this stuff goes along with it. And these are the fun conversations that we get to have around those. But overall, I think Dallas got a great one. I think their future's bright. Both of these players are the future of the WNBA. There's no questions about that. And when it comes down to marketing the game as a whole and continuing to grow, I think this is only more beneficial. So if you want to have controversy around that and growing the game, be my guest, because that should be the only goal for the WNBA, is to continue to keep the steam moving forward and grow. I mean, shout out to these women, man. Now they're getting contracts in the millions of dollars. I mean, this is what they were fighting for, and it's finally starting to come to fruition. It's awesome to see.
Yeah, I honestly, I have no problem with it. And I know a lot, like alongside with those concerns of how the day-to-day is going to go, like what happens if they break up? But I truly believe, like, when you get to this level and you're playing professional sports at this level, like, you're able to be professional. Like, it's aside from like personal intricate relationships, like we've seen players that don't like each other become teammates and still find some level of success. Like, in my quick quick research, I do think it's funny. You mentioned the Mercury beating the Detroit Shock. They went on to become the Dallas Wings.
That's amazing.
What a full circle. What a way to tie that all together. But yeah, I think this controversy is like a little bit clickbaity in a lot of ways because of those other examples we've seen. I know there were some social, I don't want to call them social media pundits, but some sports pundits saying like, oh, what if your quarterback and your halfback were in a relationship in the NFL? Again, they're professionals. I think they'd be able to separate the personal from the professional. And you even see that in your day-to-day. Like I know like it's not uncommon for people to meet in the workplace and have office romances. Like what's to say it's different from professional sports? Now, it doesn't always work. I'm not saying it's 100% guaranteed that they're going to be able to uphold their professionalism or whatever, but I think like you stated the case. She's a great talent, able to score points, going to be in this league for a while. And if it's going to elevate and maybe they have good chemistry, like roll the dice. You got a top 3 talent. Nonetheless, I think every mock that I saw in my research had her at least as a top 3 talent. So it's not really a reach to say you picked her 2 spots early, even if you fancy her as the 3rd best option. So she gets to play with someone she's very familiar with, probably has good chemistry with on and off the court. Why not? I think this is a kind of a nothing burger when it comes to controversies in the league, but I'm glad we talked about it. And Mike, I think we largely agree. So that was the social swish news from around the net, and always a pleasure.
Nice work, Chris. Wow, Suns Reddit finally making another appearance. I'm proud of you guys. Keep it up. Keep it going. Hopefully we see you next month as well. But you know what that means? It's time for the outlet point guard. And this one might hurt me to the core the most, Chris. And I think we really had to go into the life and times of this San Antonio legend, really because of the emergence of Victor Wembanyama, him setting that postseason record for 12 blocks in a postseason game. Just an absolute superstar in the making. But when you talk about the San Antonio Spurs, there's a couple of guys, especially as the Spurs have won multiple titles throughout the 2000s, that start to head to the top of the list. Your Tony Parkers, your Emmanuel Ginobili's. You can even go back to your David Robinsons. And let's go even further back, Chris. The Iceman, George Gervin. If you know, you know. Shout out NBA Street Volume 2. Or if you're just a general hoop head, you know who George Gervin is. But today on Pass the Outlet, I don't even want to give him like that good of an intro because he caused me so much pain in my early young life. But we're diving into the big fundamental. It is Tim Duncan, widely considered the greatest power forward of all time. The 6'11", 250-pound Hall of Famer, inducted in 2020, played all 19 seasons for the San Antonio Spurs. There are truly only a handful of guys like that, and that's why a lot of people consider him the greatest, man. But let's take a look at his life, man. Born and raised in the U.S. Virgin Islands, took up basketball at 14. I think I saw something crazy where, he didn't start playing basketball because when he was younger, he was like a swimmer. He was big into swimming and competitive swimming. But there was a hurricane that took out the only pool on the island where he lived. So that's when he switched to basketball. And he probably did it for the best. And we're going back to his time at Wake Forest where he stepped on campus. The season after, former Phoenix Sun and leading scorer the season before, shout out Rodney Rogers, entered the 1993 NBA draft. And at that time, the Demon Deacons coach Dave Odom actually considered redshirting him his freshman year. But he was forced to play after fellow freshman big man Matar Ndai violated NCAA rules. So they basically were like, all right, big fella, get to it. And his college career had plenty of hardwood, including 3 first-team All-ACC nods, 2 ACC Player of the Year awards, 2 first-team All-American appearances, and the 1997 National College Player of the Year. He won like 3 or 4 different awards for National College Player of the Year that year. But then the NBA came calling, as well as immortality. Like I said, he joined David Robinson as the first pick by the San Antonio Spurs in 1997, creating the infamous Twin Towers and quickly changed the narrative for the San Antonio Spurs franchise. Let's just go through his accolades as quickly as I can, Chris, because good Lord, there are a lot of them. 15 NBA All-Star Game appearances, 10 All-NBA first teams, 8 NBA All-Defensive first teams, which actually he had 15 total defensive team appearances. He was the 1998 NBA Rookie of the Year, a 5-time NBA champion, 3-time NBA Finals MVP, 2-time NBA MVP. He was obviously part of the 75th NBA anniversary team. And we're coming up on a decade since his number 21 was retired by the San Antonio franchise on December 18th, 2016. So this card I have here, this beautiful Tim Duncan 2002 Fleer Power Premium. This card is actually numbered 383 out of 1,000. So the reason I say this guy gave me plenty of heartbreaks, because as most of you, if you're watching or if you know this podcast, know, I was a Phoenix Suns ball boy during the 2004-2005 season, as well as the 06-07 season. And that 04-05 season, I thought the Suns were going to win it all. They tied a franchise record in wins. They were cruising through the playoffs, but then some infamous things happened. Joe Johnson breaks his face, and there were the San Antonio Spurs and Tim Duncan standing in front of us, and they made quick work of the Suns 4-1 in that 2005 Western Conference Finals. Chris, when you think of Tim Duncan, a.k.a. the big fundamental, what are the first things that come to your mind?
Mike, obviously, with those Phoenix Suns teams from like 05, 06, 07, like the matchups there were legendary. But the one moment that's burned into my memory, I was on my way to watch a movie. At this point in my life, I don't even remember what the movie was, but it was at the AMC theaters off of Ray Road in Ahwatukee, Chandler, Ahwatukee, somewhere in that area. I forget which side it's on of the freeway. But there was a restaurant. I think it might be still there. It was a Japanese place, but I want to say Raw Sushi, but they were playing the game on the TVs there, and it was the double overtime game. Suns versus Spurs in the game. I think it was game 1 of those Western Conference Finals, and Tim Duncan hit a 3-pointer. The Suns were up 1, and the Spurs hit a 3-pointer to win it. I just remember being in just sheer disbelief, man. Like, Tim Duncan didn't shoot threes. And so he wasn't guarded at all on the perimeter, and he just stepped up and knocked it down like it was nothing, man. But I do remember, despite hating the Spurs, like, Tim Duncan was a guy that you kind of respected, not controversial. Like you said, the big fundamental, everything, you were expecting of a basketball player. It was like, even like kids, like in the school, that play right there, Mike, burned into my memory. I didn't realize that was to tie it. I thought that was to win it.
Yeah, that was to tie it. And then I think there might have been another one as well. But yeah, this was very infamously. This is when Shaq was on the squad. Yeah. Tough memories, Chris. Tough memories.
Mm-hmm. And you see why I might not remember all the details there, because it was so traumatic. I mean, yeah, and not even talking about the Robert Horry check into the scorers table, where the Suns definitely would have won the finals had they not been hindered on that. But talking about Tim Duncan, man, like, even like, again, going back to the fundamentals, like, that's what he's most known for. To even where, like, us growing up and players in general, like, when you think about fundamentals, you think about Tim Duncan and putting it off the glass and making the easy points and doing the smart plays. Like, Tim Duncan did all the right things. And I have a lot of respect for him as a player, and honestly as a person. Like, he always seemed like a good dude. Like, And now looking back on it, despite my hatred for the Spurs, like all those guys seem like pretty good guys. Tony Parker, I don't have any complaints about him, or Manu Ginobili, especially when you kind of think about like the brash nature of players. And I think maybe that's due to social media. We maybe didn't have as much exposure to these players back then, but respect Tim Duncan for what he did. It's kind of like with me, it's like for Kobe Bryant. As a player, when he was active and playing against the Suns, I hated the guy. But the second he retired, it was like, respect. I respect Kobe. And just like I respect Tim Duncan.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not? I mean, we talk about the accolades, but Tim Duncan, there's a reason they call him the big fundamental, and how a lot of people and coaches try to teach their kids early. He just emulated it on the literally highest stage. He set the whole train in motion for the San Antonio Spurs to be one of the all-time greatest franchises single-handedly when he joined that team in 1998. We all knew, I guess, okay, you and me didn't know as much, Chris, because we were pretty young at that point. I was 8 years old, but the NBA knew how great of a player David Robinson was, but he was always that one extra piece away, and it seemed instantaneously when Tim Duncan joined the team, alongside with guys like Avery Johnson. They won that title in the shortened season against the New York Knicks, and it was off to the races from there. Then they got Tony Parker. Then they got Emmanuel Ginobili. Then they brought in other key pieces. Steve Kerr got a title with them. Robert Horry. Even players that a lot of people hated, once they joined the Spurs, you had to respect them because they fit within the culture and the system. Talking about guys like Bruce Bowen, Steven Jackson, DeJuan Blair, even to a certain extent. He created a culture of team. And those two guys specifically, Ginobili and Parker, went along for the ride and brought everybody along with them. I mean, there's a reason why Kawhi Leonard was an NBA Finals MVP within such a short time, is because they recognized how great he was, and they capitalized on his defensive prowess and his ability to score with his length. And man, I mean, I just remember being in the gym working on these like over the shoulder jumpers off the glass because Tim Duncan did it all the time. Right. And especially as I got older, got a little bit bigger, I was like, I need to make sure that this is part of my game, because if there's anybody to emulate as a big man, it's always Tim Duncan, man. And it's funny that you talk about how these guys were probably nice guys. Chris, that was the worst part about always losing to the San Antonio Spurs. And especially as somebody that was on the court rebounding for them, they were all amazing people. I remember Tim Duncan giving me the biggest smile and genuinely coming up to me and asking me how I was doing after one game in the Western Conference Finals. And I'm like, I want to hate you so much, Tim, but it's just like, you're the nicest person, one of the nicest athletes that I'll have ever met, man. And, there's just a lot of those awesome stories that I had, and there's a bunch of standouts, and he will always be one of them just because of that small interaction that I had with him. But he always tore our hearts out, man. When those Phoenix Suns teams, which I will still go to my last dying breath thinking that they were some of the best teams the NBA has ever saw, could never get over that San Antonio Spurs hump, and it was all because of Tim Duncan. Damn you, Tim. But, man, I mean, so we have that card, but I also do have some, like, different type of memorabilia as well from some of these guys, because, like, after a while, when you get cards signed, you start to break out some other stuff. So I have this Beckett basketball signed magazine. You guys can see right there. He signed it right there too. I don't know if Beckett basketball is even around. This is basically when the card market was younger in the mid 2000s, and you could go in there and see like your cards and what they were priced at on the open markets. So I got a lot of cool ones. I got a Amari Stoudemire signed one as well. But yeah, folks, when we talk about outlet point guard, this is what we got. We got days and days worth of players that we have to go through and signatures of these old time stars. And I thought it was important to talk about Tim Duncan when everybody is really riding on the Wemby hype train. You got to go back to the original OG and see where it all started. So, do I say shout out Tim Duncan? Yeah, it's been a long time. Shout out Tim Duncan. I think he's by far the best player that we have talked about so far on the outlet point guard. And I know I'm looking at a couple of them up here. We got some awesome ones coming up here soon too, Chris. But as always, appreciate you going down memory lane with me. This was Pass the Outlet, episode 38. The NBA playoffs keep rolling along. The NBA offseason has come early for some, aka the Phoenix Suns. We'll see what they do over the next couple of months. And we keep rolling here at Valley Sports Plug. We're going to be having Heat Check Podcast episode 50 come out this month, man. It's been a long time in the making. We've been really going at it here, talking Valley sports, and especially here on Pass the Outlet, talking everything basketball. We've been having a hell of a time. But Chris, before we head out for the night, I'll pass it over to you so you can let the people know anything before we get on out of here.
Yeah, Mike, had a lot of fun tonight. I know we went a little long, a little over 90 minutes. But man, the NBA playoffs is in full swing. I know it's long. It's about a month and a half, 2 months, 2.5 months, something like that. It's a lot of basketball, but honestly, it's the best basketball you're going to see all year. And I'm excited to see how the rest of the playoffs shake down and get back on here in June and talk to you about the NBA finals and what's going on, some more offseason news that's happening. But yeah, this is a very exciting time. And for Valley Sports Plug, a big month for us. This Saturday, the 999 challenge. We're going to watch the Diamondbacks take on the Mets, and I'm going to try and down 9 beers and 9 hot dogs in 9 innings. So we're going to live stream that. Hope y'all are watching. But Mike, always a pleasure, never a chore, in the words of Stephen Miller.
Chris, appreciate you. I have faith in you. You're going to get it done this year. But for all of you guys watching on the playback, if you stayed with us to the end, we appreciate you. Make sure you like the stream, follow us here on Valley Sports Plug YouTube. You can follow all of our socials as well at AZ_VSP, so you can stay up to date with everything we got going on here. But I'm Mr. Benjamin. That's Chris Patrick. We will see you guys next time. And as always, go Suns.